Hello there, and welcome to the Portal to Ascension and many other channels that we're streaming live on today. It's my pleasure and honor to be once again interviewing Michael Cremo. And also, we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming Portal to Ascension conference. And so, for your introduction, Michael, I'd love to see your shining face. If we can bring Michael on up here. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Michael. And Michael is a very special being. Oops, I can't do that with my little notes. I have to put them there. Michael is a very special being who has been deeply diving into what we call alternative archaeology for many years. And he has written numerous books on this topic, including being a co-author of the book Forbidden Archaeology, which has become very popular over the years. He's also known as a Vedic creationist, and we'll get into a little bit more about that as we go in our conversation here. He's also a freelance researcher and a longtime member of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, as well as the World Archeological Congress. And so I've heard some really cool stories in his bio that we're going to talk about. And he's also going to share some very intriguing things about the large-scale cosmic picture, which should enlighten us, especially help us put things into perspective at this time on the planet, which has so much going on. And so he's also a proponent of the hidden history of the human race, which is also very intriguing. And of course, is one of the many topics that Portal to Ascension loves to help us explore. And so without further ado, Michael, thank you so much and welcome to the live stream.
Great to be with you, Chiraya, and with everyone else who's going to be coming to the Portal to Ascension conference in San Diego later this month.
That's right. In April, we're at the dawning of April here, and April 21st to 23rd this year, we're going to be in San Diego, and the conference is going to be at the Marina Village Center there, if you're familiar with the town. And Michael, among many others, I think there's somewhere between 20 and 30 amazing speakers who will be there. Of course, Neil Gaur and Joan of Angels and all of the Portal to Ascension favorites will be there live and in person. And so briefly tell us, Michael, what your topic. You don't need to give away too much on the topic you're going to share about in person, but what are you going to be speaking about there?
Well, it's going to be about a cultural heritage project that I'm involved in India. It's called the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium.
Wow.
And it's meant to present to people using the latest communications technologies the concepts that underlie the Vedic picture of the origin and purpose of the universe. It's basically it's a kind of virtual reality system for souls that have not yet gone through the process of ascension to the higher levels of reality. You could say that this project is in itself a kind of portal to ascension, in the sense that it's meant to elevate the consciousness of people in these very difficult times.
Wow, that sounds very, very intriguing. So not to give away too much about that, we'll let people go find out about that live at the conference, or you can buy virtual tickets as well. So we hope to see you there. And we will, of course, see Michael there. And in the meantime, something caught my eye when I was looking back at your bio again today, and it was your name, your spiritual name, Druta Karmadasa.
Yes.
I said it correctly.
Yeah, that's a Sanskrit name. It was given to me at the time of initiation by my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose teachings I encountered in the 1970s, the early 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a little feedback problem just then?
Nope.
Okay.
Not
all right. So it's a name of Vishnu,
Uh-huh.
the Hindu god, and it means, well, the druta can mean fast, and karma can mean work. So it can mean the Lord who works very quickly. And it can also mean, druta can also mean to melt the karma away, the reactions to materialistic activities.
Let's do
So,
that today.
so that's where that name came from. It's when one is initiated by a spiritual master, it's considered like a second birth. So just like when you're born, you get a name. When you're born spiritually by the process of connecting yourself with a disciplic line that is dedicated to spirituality, then you also take a second or spiritual birth and receive a name at that time.
That's beautiful. And so many people will know of Prabhupada, I'm sure, who are listening. Some people may not be aware. And that's quite cool that you were actually his direct disciple and knew him personally, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Um, Mostly I know him through his teachings.
Huh?
Personally, I did have some encounters with him, but he always used to say that the spiritual master is present in two forms: vapu, the physical form, and vani, his teachings and writings. And he said the vapu is temporary. It'll be gone at some point in time. And he did leave his body in 1977, shortly after I was initiated. But his presence is still very much with me through his teachings, especially his books that he wrote. So I think that's a message for all of us, that we can be in touch with spiritual personalities and with spiritual realities through sound vibration. Because what is the book? It is speech that has been recorded in print form.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, everything in the universe and the universe itself come from sound vibration ultimately.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that teaching that we know of in the Western scriptures is also found originally, previous to that, in the Vedic scriptures.
Yes. Yeah, according to the Vedic cosmology, everything begins with sound, and sound is transmitted by the ethereal element. So sometimes we hear about, the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. So actually, according to the Vedic cosmology, the first thing that comes out is ether and sound vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And then from ether and sound come the come the next element, air, and along with air, touch. Because how do we, we sense the air moving with our skin. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's a phenomenon of touch. And then from that comes fire. And associated with fire is vision or sight. And then from that comes water. And associated with water is a sense of taste. And then from water comes earth. And with earth is associated with the sense of smell. Now,
Mm.
some people sometimes ask me, well, how is it that water can come from fire? But we have to understand that these elements, these five elements that are there in Vedic cosmology, the ancient Greeks also had the five elements. It's quite common in different traditions.
Mhm.
But even according to modern science, matter exists in five states. Uh, First comes space or ether. Ether provides the space for physical and mental objects. And according to the Big Bang cosmology of modern science, that's the first thing that comes into existence. A tiny speck of matter suddenly expands to give time and space.
Hmm.
And then from there come the first elements are the gases, the very simple gases, helium and hydrogen. And and from those gases come stars, which is like
Mhm.
fire.
Okay.
And I was just reading recently, astronomers have discovered that stars are shooting out jets of water into
Oh,
space, into outer space. They're producing water, like water is H2O, hydrogen,
yeah.
2 parts, oxygen, 1 part. Oxygen is a heavier element than hydrogen or helium. It's made in the first generation of stars inside their thermonuclear reactions. They produce heavier elements. So the second generation of stars would be producing things like water, which is made of heavier elements than hydrogen and helium, oxygen, in other words. And
Yeah.
then from there, solids, heavier elements made of atoms with more protons and neutrons are made, the solid elements like Earth. So even according to modern science, the elements proceed one from the other uh, by a process of condensation. So it's
Hmm.
kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is getting too
No,
deeply into the weeds here, but
not for me.
to me, it's kind of fascinating.
That piece about the star, that answered, because I was wondering about that the other day. How did water come? Well, water, it depends on who you listen to, because with Mamuni Mayan, he says it a little differently. But fire, water comes from fire. What you just said and explained, that makes incredible amounts of sense. Now, when we talk about from the Sanskrit, the word prakriti is nature. So prakriti, that these stars would have been born in this field of potential we call prakriti, right? And then within that, they would have started putting out this hydrogen and this helium. Hydrogen is life force. Hydrogen is found in Lourdes water and other very healing waters around the planet. So
Yes.
to me, it makes total sense that that's one of the first two elements that comes forth. This is literally life. And then they come forth and then they start condensing, condensating, and then other elements come out of there. And now you're building the building blocks of that potential called prakriti into more and more differentiated form over eons of time. Do I have it right? Something like that?
Yeah. But what I find especially interesting is that the Vedic cosmology is a consciousness-based uh, universe or cosmos. Consciousness is there from the beginning. There are conscious intelligences present right from the very beginning, actually forever, really. Uh, and it's interesting to me that when these elements are produced, say when the uh, uh, air element is produced, it comes not only with the element, it comes with the sense object that it's associated with, which
Mm-hmm.
is touch. It comes with an organ that can sense things in the touch realm, namely skin. How do we know if something is hot or cold? It's, we touch it, we feel it on our skin. How do we experience, the touch sensations, the kind of things that we get from touch? Is something rough or smooth,
Mm-hmm.
slippery or sticky? You get it through your skin. And then, according to the Vedic cosmology, there is an intelligent being, a demigod, who's associated with that element and those senses. So, that demigod, according to the Vedic cosmology, is Vayu, who controls the air and the wind and things like that.
Right.
So, right from the beginning, you've got the idea that the material elements are there not just by accident, they're there to generate perceptions, which we are equipped to perceive. And, if you look at the explanation given by modern science, really doesn't make a lot of sense because according to their point of view, they say the universe came into existence 13.7 billion years ago, but there was nothing, they would say, conscious. There was nothing to observe it, nobody to perceive it. So if you have a situation like that, does it really even exist?
Does
If there's
does what exist? The element itself?
if you've got, yeah, how do you know it exists if there's no conscious person to experience it?
Right.
They would say until the very end. They say life on this planet,
Mhm.
which many think is the only place life exists,
Right.
uh, began a billion years ago. The most simple forms of life.
Billions, I hear. Billions, some say. Not even
Well,
1 billion.
maybe 2 billion at the most. They're the first simple microorganism, one-celled creature,
Mm, mhm.
which I believe would be conscious, but they wouldn't think so. They would think
Right.
that conscious, intelligent beings come into existence fairly late in the process, maybe 100 or 200 million years ago. And as far as humans like us, 300,000 years ago maximum. So it's kind of interesting to me that whoever programmed matter programmed it in such a way that it would generate sight, sound, smell, touch. What did I miss?
Mhm.
Taste,
Hearing. Yeah.
hearing.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Right.
that it's almost like uh, somehow or other the plan for a whole multimedia experience was programmed right into the beginning or something. You
Yes,
know,
like that consciousness itself had intent when bringing the whole construct, including all the building blocks called the elements, into form. That totally makes sense, and it's a wonderful thought form to ponder.
yeah, that just occurred to me the other day when I was thinking about these things. I mean, if you think that conscious, intelligent life only came into existence at the very end of this huge period of time that the universe supposedly was existing. But how would anybody know it was existing if there was no consciousness involved in it? I think there was consciousness involved right from the beginning.
Uh huh. Reminds
And
me of the saying of the if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it really fall?
I think not, basically.
Right. So that is a really fabulous array of possibility to dive into when thinking about this larger context in which we exist. And of course, we also know, and the Vedas teach, and even the other scriptures teach, that our consciousness actually impacts matter and causes certain things to outpicture into reality simply by our will and our intent, and what our consciousness basically speaks into existence through the power of the word.
Yeah, ultimately, I would say consciousness produces matter.
Yes.
There's a teaching in the Vedic text, the Upanishads, says Sarvam Kal Vidam Brahma. That means everything is spirit. It's
Mm-hmm.
just when you see something, that is actually spiritual, you mistake it or try to analyze it apart from its source, then that's matter, what we call matter. It's just not understood for what it actually is, an emanation from a supreme conscious source.
Mm-hmm. And so that's crystallized sound. Matter is the sound that the intent and will of the consciousness spoken out and crystallized into what we call matter, or the matter of
Right.
creation.
That's a good. I never thought of that before. Matter, mother.
Yeah.
That does, because in the Vedic text, matter is considered to be the personified by uh, goddess Kali or Durga, sometimes called the consort of Shiva.
Mm-hmm. And
Uh,
Parvati, who becomes Kali underneath that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. And so
that
Parvati and Prakriti are one and the same in some of the teachings as I've understood it. Yes.
right. So it's kind of interesting among archaeologists. You mentioned I speak at archaeology conferences.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty materialistic, but they want to say now that matter has agency, and I believe it does, considering that the material energy actually is identical with a person, and Kali or Durga, and she is an active agent. She does stuff.
Yeah. The mother, divine mother. Yes. That in itself is a fascinating topic. And there's many stories of interactions between Shiva and Parvati, or Shiva and Kali, and you can understand them on a very light level, almost like a child watching a cartoon, a story, hearing a folk tale. And then they have layers and levels of meaning, including all the way to this cosmic reality and the energy of like nuclear reactivity and power, and how physics and metaphysics actually work. So that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love the Vedic stories, because they get us activated on so many levels.
Well, I like what you said a moment ago about sound being the source of everything. But it depends upon the quality of sound that one is allowing to enter through one's ears into one's consciousness, and it depends upon what sort of sounds one is emanating, putting out, because there's so much sound vibration going on about mundane politics and people putting out those kinds of sound vibrations, and they kind of, if one is just influenced by that, one gets just totally absorbed in what's produced by that sort of sound vibration. Whereas if one is giving attention to other types of sound, transcendental sound, uh, that's what, for example, mantras are. And mantras are found not just in the Vedic tradition, they're also found in other traditions. They may not be called mantras, but I was riding in an Uber the other day, and the lady who was driving, she had she was tuned into a Spanish language Catholic radio broadcast, and the priest or whoever was leading the ceremony was just repeating again and again, I think in Latin, uh, what in effect was a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could hear what he was saying. He was repeating it again and again and again and again, which is what you do with a mantra. You repeat it, you focus your mind on it, and it helps clear away the residue of other types of sound vibration that we
Mm-hmm.
may be exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it clears the way. Now, everything you're saying there is truly the topic at the core of my passion in this existence, because what you're talking about is how we have a responsibility not only for what we say and speak into existence, but also for what we are allowing ourselves to hear. Now, that is huge for people. I feel like that's huge for us to consider. What music are you listening to? What news are you listening to? What gossip are you listening to? Are you listening? Are you giving an ear to things that are nourishing and uplifting and inspiring? Are you giving an ear to the ancient scriptures? Are you giving an ear to wise spiritual folk and your own inner wisdom? Or are you giving an ear to, or are you giving the other ear? Are you giving the ear to the stuff that would lead to not so awesome karma? So, in other words, what that's saying is through what we're listening to and what we're speaking, we're actually manifesting our own experience of this reality. And that's why I was thinking about this earlier. So, I believe both in the Vedas, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but also in the Western teachings, it says, fear the Lord. And so, Lord means law, and the law is what we're speaking about, that which goes out comes back. So instead of thinking there's this ominous being to be afraid of, it's like, oh, be aware that what you are speaking is going to come back. What you're speaking into existence by listening, speaking, and acting creates compounded momentum, and karma is going to come back. So be aware. So instead of fear, it's like pay attention, because you have a role in this experience of creation here.
Yeah, I mean, there are different concepts of the supreme being. And what I found interesting in the Vedic tradition that I follow, which is the Bhakti tradition, there's a recognition that on that God can be revealed in many ways. One is as just the all-pervading energy that pervades everything. That's one thing. And then there's the presence of the Supreme Being in the heart of each living entity, whether it's human or animal or plant, fish, insect, whatever. Uh, there's the presence of the Supreme Being there along with the soul. And that gets into another topic that I encounter in archaeology and other academic disciplines, and even in the wider general public. the idea of transhumanism, because the tendency in the Western world has been to put the focus just on human beings. It's a very anthropocentric view. And, for example, some religions said only human beings have souls, the animals are just uh, machines made of meat, and you can kill them, no problem. They don't have a soul. So I'm kind of in favor of expanding our attribution of personhood and consciousness beyond the human level, and understanding that every living thing, what even the smallest insect,
Mhm.
is a conscious individual and is part of God, really.
Yeah.
So that kind of vision, I think, would, I mean, we even have trouble respecting other human beings if they're another gender, another race, another nationality. We have a hard time even reaching that level. But say we do reach the level where we understand that each human being is worthy of our respect. If we can get that far, then I think we have to start extending it to other species as well.
Again, to the Western scripture says, "What you do unto the least of these, you do unto me." And so God, as we spoke of at the beginning of this, all that is came from God, source love, the prime creator, whatever one wants to call that original impulse. And so therefore there isn't anything that was made that's not made from that, by that, with that, through that. And so we are looking at a reflection wherever we go. So the more that we can learn to love these reflections and accept them as they are, and share in those higher vibrations of love and acknowledgement, and what is namaste, I believe, means the God in me sees the God in you. And so that's that consciousness, I believe, that you're pointing to, that we are, as a race, dawning, we're at the dawning of opening our eyes to that higher reality, which, if we start thinking and acting from those thoughts, then really imagine a world where that's the consciousness. It's going to change quite a bit, isn't it?
Yes, and I I was just thinking on this line of thought in response to your noting a few moments ago about how some people see God as something to be feared, as a lawgiver, and that is one level of God realization, to appreciate God as the most powerful, like a great king or something. And, you have to be careful. You've got to be, but God is also, can also be, excuse me, I've got to take
Sure, take your time.
a, God can also be perceived in another way as the best friend, the
Yes.
best spouse, the best,
Yes.
there's, like you were saying, all of our relationships are actually reflections of relationships that are there between each conscious being and the source of
Mm,
all conscious
mm,
beings, who reciprocates with how we want to relate.
mm. Wow.
So,
That is a fantastic thought right there.
well, it's one of the remarkable insights. Of course, you do see reflections of this in other faiths, Christian traditions,
Hmm.
mostly on the esoteric or mystical side.
Hmm.
You have some saint who considered herself to be the bride of Christ, or
Yes.
uh, in the Psalms they have King Solomon speaking about God as a lover, and things like that. So I think that element is also there, in addition to the awe and reverence that many people feel towards supreme being, however they conceive of it in their particular tradition. There's also, if you look at the more esoteric side of things, there's this other uh, more personal and relational type of dealings that it's possible to have with the source.
Yes, the Sufi are a great example of that. They call God the beloved, and like the mystic poets, the Sufi mystic poets, Kabir and Hafiz, and what's the other guy, Rumi. They write poems to the beloved. And so, yes, this love affair, this falling in love with God, is also the first commandment in the Western scriptures. So, really, you could say Jesus was a bhakti yogi, perhaps,
Yeah,
and that whole tradition is a tradition of bhakti yogi, in the sense when we abandon all of our old thoughts, kind of like what you were saying about erasing negative sounds with positive sounds. When we throw our whole attention and all of our love on the supreme, that which is beyond all and includes all and is in all, the source of all sources, the being of all beings, light of all lights, love of all loves. When we love that with all of our heart, might, and soul, then we are changing our karma. We are erasing the past. We are coming into the fold of that higher octave, which will set us free.
yeah, I couldn't say it better myself.
You can see it gets me all excited. Like, yes, yes, that's what we're here to do. I feel that's the core of my mission, I guess you could say, if there's a thing about that, if that's a thing. The mission to restore love, to help us all remember love as the core essence of our being, and to see that and witness that in each other's eyes, so that we can together remember that and let go of the charade that we've been playing, pretending to be separate beings and getting into all this drama, which, some say we did it on purpose, or we knew that was going to happen before we dove into the construct. We got ourselves all tangled up in a mess, and now we're
Yeah.
like, wait a second, maybe that's not so fun after all. Maybe love is actually what I want. We find that in each other.
Well, I hope these things all come out in San Diego the end of April. That's what I'm looking forward to having people there who are into these things, are excited about them, and
Yes,
let's
absolutely.
just bring it to another level.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. What a treat and what a delight. Well, Michael, do you want to keep talking a little, or how are you feeling?
Well, I'm. I think we've just gotten started.
Yes, for sure. These are, I've always been so enamored with Mother India. I remember being a small child. I must have been, I don't know, very wee, like 2 or 3 or maybe. And my grandparents in New York had were internationally inclined and had lots of friends from all over the world. And I remember being held by this beautiful Indian woman who had, the red dot on her forehead and the sari and the bangles. And I remember her holding me. It's one of my earliest memories. And I remember being in the rose garden. I remember loving all of the stuff my grandmother had from having traveled to India. And it's always just been so fascinating to me. And then when I look at the temples and I see, you know, the impact that the architecture had. Like you cannot help but realize the level of advancement of the society that would have been able to build such incredible architecture.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was going to ask about your name,
Yeah.
Shiraya. Was that your birth name,
It,
or did you get it at some other point?
well, it's a really interesting story. So my name came through this is not my birth name. My name came through verbally, and I cognized it when I heard it from another person. When I heard it, I determined how to spell it. And then it turned out that the way that I determined how to spell it matches my nakshatra. So it's actually the correct way of saying my name in the Vedic tradition of the nakshatra. So
Yeah.
starting it with ch like that is just naturally what it is actually meant to be. And so when I was looking up the meanings of it, I found a number, but the one that resonated with my role is orator and scribe for the lineages of light. So I do bring in wisdom teachings and speak them and do my best to share them, learn them, and live them in this life. So that name, Shiraya, is basically indicating that. It also means like bird or song. So it's kind of like it's all about speaking things into existence, I guess you say. Speaking.
Sound vibration again.
Yeah. And then the Dharma, I was actually, for some reason, I was connected briefly with Yogi Bhajan, and not him personally. I never met him, but he gave me the name Dharma Kar. And many people were named Dharmakar in that tradition. So when I went to redo my name and felt a calling to literally change it, um, I adopted the Dharma part, because obviously if we want to speak and remember constantly what we're learning and what we're integrating and remembering, Dharma being the path of righteousness. So I felt it was a good mantra to have in my name. And I knew I was to take the name because there was a meditation where my name was literally spinning for an entire hour. And not only with me, but another person said, Shiraya, your name, it was spinning. It was spinning. And that's the same thing that happened to me. And so after that happened, I was like, I guess it's time for me to take that name.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the architecture in India. It really is fascinating. I mean, one of the most interesting architectural phenomena I encountered was the Ellora cave temples near Aurangabad in, I guess, northwestern India. Have you ever been to the Ellora caves or seen?
Yes, I've
There,
never. Mm-hmm.
like, there's like basically what there is there's like a mountain, kind of like a low mountain with a long top, made of solid granites, just solid stone. And what they've done is somebody, went to the top and started carving a temple, a multi-level temple,
Yes.
and it's called the Kailash temple. It's a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva, but it's just this huge structure, a couple 100 feet high, starting from the top and then coming down. And there are elaborate rooms, columns, windows, everything, all carved out of one solid block of stone. I mean, there's something similar in Petra, in the country
Mm-hmm.
of Jordan,
That's right.
but that is just facades.
Mm-hmm.
It's facades of buildings carved into the stone. These are actual whole three-dimensional buildings carved right out of the solid rock. And I just wonder, how do people do something like that?
Great. Well, now I have two takes on that actually, which are completely opposite but both fascinating. Shall I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So some say it's almost like 3D printing done by advanced beings, with that they create the holographic imagery in some kind of computer device and then project it onto the stone to 3D print it into existence. So
Yeah.
and then on the other hand, I had a beautiful being named Dr. Jessie Mercé, who's a Vastu teacher, said she taught us that the stone carver tradition is ancient and incredibly advanced. Like that there are literally people who can sit there and do that level of refined carving hand to hand. So interestingly enough, it's like, which one is it? Is it the 3D carving, or is it or did people do it? It's like, we don't know. And yes, so here's some pictures of the Elora caves. I'm not sure if we could pull up one of those images amongst them just to get a little bigger picture. But we can see many of them there, and people can look it up as well. The Elora is absolutely fascinating. It just things that make you go, things that make you go, oh,
Yeah.
the world. We can't even begin to do something like that today. It's so far beyond the capacity. And there's videos on YouTube about current day stone carver technologists saying we can't do this. With many of the stone structures that you've probably studied around the world, they're like, we got, the Elora caves, yes.
Yeah, in my most recent trip to India, I was looking at different temples in isolated rural areas of Bengal, West Bengal, and there was one of them. It's called the Suvarna Vihar Temple, and it's
Vihar.
Suvarna Vihar, and it's called the Satya Yuga Temple.
Oh,
So,
yeah, we're getting, yes.
And of course, the temple structure that's there today is fairly modern, built within the last century or two.
Okay.
But as part of the temple, in part of the temple compound, they have other architectural remnants, pieces of columns and things like that, that were part of a temple they say existed during the Satya Yuga. And that, for those who aren't so familiar with the Yuga cycles, there was a cycle of 4 ages or yugas: the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. And each one lasts hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. The total of all 4 lasts 4,320,000 years. And according to the Vedic cosmological calendar, we're now in the Kali Yuga, which is the last age. The Satya Yuga is considered to be like a golden age of spirituality. In the next age, things get worse. And then in the next age, even worse. And now we're in the final age, which is
we're like, woo!
like an age of increasing social and environmental disturbance, which we actually unfortunately see. But uh, they claim to have these remnants of a temple that existed there during the Satya Yuga, which would be about 3 or 4 million years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the modern scientific way of looking at things, you wouldn't have anything like that. A temple building constructed of stone until about maybe 10,000 years ago at most.
Yeah, and that's even stretching their comfort zone in terms
Yeah.
of time frames.
I think they think Gobekli Tepe, where they have kind of carved stone panels,
Hmm.
goes back about 13,000 years. And, so that, like you say, that is stretching it, but I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Hmm.
So to have something like that from millions of years ago is really amazing. And I've kind of made a career of finding things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was literally just searching for remnants of Satya Yuga.
Oh, really?
Yes, so thank you for that hint. And what I thought of is interesting. You might find this thought form interesting as well. It dawned on me that once we get down in the dumps of the distracted consciousness and the lower consciousness and the repercussion of negative karma that we call this Kali Yuga that we're in,
Hmm.
then we, at that point we start praying and praying and praying, and we start, God, please, we reach out, and people start reaching out, source, God, by whatever name they have, and then please help people be good, please help us up level, please fix the environment, please make everything wonderful, please help everyone feel love in their hearts, please awaken humanity. So we, at the end of the age, we manifest the Satya Yuga all over again, because we're just so tired of the negativity. We're like, could we get back to this old age that wants to be the new age and the golden age?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
felt that
that
was interesting.
that does happen. Yeah, like there are predictions given in the Puranas, the historical writings of ancient India, of what the Kali Yuga will be like as it goes on. We're just in the very beginning of it now. It started about 5,000 years ago. And, if you look at the world cultures that existed 5,000 years ago, you see if you look at their art, their literature, whatever there is of it, they were kind of in touch with higher dimensions of reality. They seemed they had connections and communications with higher beings. And but that kind of, when Kali Yuga began, that kind of communication with the divine, the source, it kind of broke down, and we were left to our uh, own devices, so to speak.
Right.
Uh, but things aren't going to get a lot better as time goes on. But it's like you were saying, there are, I mean, you didn't say exactly this, but this kind of goes along with what you were saying. According to the Puranas, there are personalities who are going to reboot things after the end of the age of Kali and start another golden age. And
Uh-huh.
they're waiting for that time. They're in psychic uh, reserves in the Himalayan mountains somewhere. There's a place called Kalapa Ground where they are uh, in caves or something, waiting for the Kali Yuga to end, and so they can start a new Satya Yuga. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like we're kind of the like if you have a school and you graduate in the first year, or you get held back, then you get in the second year you get another chance.
Right.
You're held back in the third era. In the Satya Yuga, if you use your human life properly, you're out of here.
You're gonna just woohoo.
And
On
the
that note,
crazy,
let's pause really quick and come back to this topic, because I have a few comments and it's really fascinating. And let's share with everybody about the upcoming conference. Tina, did you have something you wanted to show us so we can take a look at the website here and just let everybody know more of the details? of the Portal to Ascension Conference, which is happening April 21st to 23rd in San Diego this year. Another wonderful in-person gathering where you can be with Michael Cremo and Neil Gaur, Joan of Angels, and so many wonderful, wonderful beings. We've got all of these fascinating folk here that you can hobnob with and get to know and see their presentations. And their presentations are, of course, going to be the leading edge of thought of what is current in the three main topics of Portal to Ascension, which are ancient history, true world history, ET and UFOs, as well as spiritual awakening. And so there's the founder, Neil. Of course, there's Michelle Anderson, who's the illustrious hostess, MC, and Alan. You can see at the bottom of Alan's face there. Alan Steinfeld of New Realities will be there. Deborah Giusti will be there doing her Ascension panel, along with Scott Thomas, who was her co-host on Saturday Night Live, and Tangela of Soul Search. We have some beautiful musicians coming as well. And it's just going to be an absolutely fabulous experience. Larissa Stowe will be there. There's Sheila Seppi and Jenna Layden. So many fantastic people. Eric Rankin. So please do come out and join us in person in San Diego for this amazing event. It's sure to be a crowd pleaser. And, when we get together in person, it's even more activating than being online. But if you absolutely cannot make it in person, you can also buy online tickets, of course, though everyone, I'm sure, would love to see you in person. And the tickets are very reasonably priced. And so please do come on out to San Diego and join us for the conference. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm really looking forward to it, for meeting some of the other researchers and speakers and whoever comes to listen. And I think beyond giving my talk, I really welcome the opportunity to get to know some of the people better. Hopefully, there'll be plenty of opportunity for associating outside the formal lecture structure.
Yes,
So
I'm sure
I
there.
think some of us are going to be holding workshops after the
Yes,
conference, the
that's
day
right. Tina, do
after.
you want to pull that back up again so we can look at those workshops? You and Adam Apollo, as well as the Stargate folks, are all holding workshops on Monday. So not sure if she's going to pull that up or not, but you can certainly. Oh, here it comes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so Michael Cremo's got a post-conference workshop on Monday. Thanks for reminding me of that very important point there, Michael. And so that'll be great if for people who want to go even a little deeper with Michael on Monday afternoon. And then there, if you click the tab of Monday there, Tina, there you go. You'll see that we have the Stargate meditation first, followed by ancient galactic alchemy with Adam Apollo, and finally the Science Meets the Vedas with Michael. So Monday's also a full day of really powerful workshops if you want to dive in a little further there. Thank you, Tina. Perfect. Yes. And so before, do you have anything else you want to say about the conference, Michael?
Well, we were talking a little bit in the beginning about my topic, which is a cultural heritage project, the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, which is going to be presenting a lot of the ideas that we've been talking about on this podcast. And uh, I'm kind of looking forward to sharing that with people. And for the workshop, we are going to get into science and the Vedas and its different categories, but we're also going to have a mantra meditation session. So it'll be experiential as well as
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
intellectual.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love it. So it's going to be a really powerful experience. Hope everybody can come out. And jumping back to the ages, I've heard there's different people who, some people think we're in Dwapara Yuga because some people think we went from Satya to uh, Treta to Dwapara to Kali, then we go back to Dwapara, then to Treta, and back to Satya. So, I mean, there's different takes on these large cosmic
Yes.
cycles, I suppose. So some people think, well, no, actually, we're on the upswing rather than the downswing, and so I prefer being on the upswing personally.
Yeah.
Prefer that.
It's kind of interesting, actually. That idea, I'm familiar with it. I've spoken at a conference organized by the people who are very much in favor of that idea. And um, it's based on the precession cycle,
Mm-hmm.
which is mentioned in the Vedic literature. But the Vedic literature itself also talks about, the traditional yuga cycle system that basically I follow. But I don't think they're necessarily contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
That there can be a cycle based on precession, you know, but I wish it could be called by a different name, like processional yuga system,
I see. Yeah.
something. But it's interesting. But even sticking to the traditional view, you could say, of the long yugas and the repeating cycle of yugas, not going through and back and forth and back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Even within the the traditional yuga calculations, which say that we're 5,000 years into a Kali Yuga that's going to last for 427,000 more years. Even according to that point of view, there's a 10,000-year period at the beginning of the Kali Yuga. This period began about 500 years ago, and it's got 9,500 more years to go. During that interval, there is an upswing. There is an opportunity to transcend the effects of Kali Yuga and make a lot of spiritual advancement. So it is on the upswing.
Okay, good. So it's sort of like wheels within wheels and cycles within cycles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. The big
that's a good way
meta
to look at it.
cycles, and then you have the within the meta cycles that have cycles within them. Then there's smaller cycles within those, and because it's very vast, this whole concept of yugas is cosmically vast, and then granularly wherever we find ourselves in time and space, on the intersection of time and space here, we we can we can individually do the work of ascending in any given moment if we've got the right teachers, the right consciousness, the right karma, the right setting.
Yeah, yeah. Just because it's raining, you don't have to get wet.
Right, exactly. Depends
Put
how
up your put
motivated
up
one
your
is.
put up your umbrella.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course,
Uh,
some people like Fred Astaire. They like dancing in the rain.
yeah, exactly. Just dancing in the well, and that's that transcendent quality. That's that love beyond
That's
all understanding. I guess you could say,
that's the
right?
ultimate in any situation. You're ecstatic.
Absolutely. Well, that is a beautiful note to close our time here together. I wish we could talk for another couple of hours. I think we I'm getting this tune that it may be time to wrap up here for today for us. But Michael, as always, I'd love to chat again sometime.
Oh, we certainly will.
Yes. And so Michael Cremo, you can find him at mcremo.com and look into about 6 books that he's got out, including Forbidden Archaeology. Fascinating man, fascinating topic, spiritual person dedicated to not only discovering things for the benefit of the world, but also the inner quest and the inner practices of the deep spiritual path. And so it's always an honor and a pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiraya, and
Absolutely.
to all the PTA crew.
Absolutely. Our pleasure indeed. And so my name again is Shariah Dharma. Happy to be your host today on behalf of Neil Gaur and all of the team at Portal to Ascension, who do hope to meet you in San Diego. And one way or another, please check out the website at ascensionconference.com. Come on out in person or get a virtual ticket and enjoy the show. So we will see you again on Portal to Ascension very, very soon. Much love. Bye-bye.
This is game time, everybody. The time for us to come together in unity and realize that we are all reflections of each other. We're all interconnected.
You have worth that goes beyond what you do as a human on this planet. On Portal to Ascension, I've dealt with thousands of topics, thousands of speakers. It's called Portal to Ascension because it's an umbrella for all types of information that we really want to delve into. The bottom line is remembering who you truly are.